Okay, welcome back to another episode of Shadows and Ink. And today we are discussing dark Gothic fantasy with author Paula Cappa. And I'm going to let her introduce herself, so take it away.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Paula, and my latest novel is Draakensky, a supernatural tale of magic and romance, and it's published by Crystal Lake Publishing. Um, it's doing really well. I'm very excited about it. It is gothic, it is supernatural, and it's magic. And it was very challenging to write because it's kind of a genre blending going on now. It's not just a straight horror or straight fantasy. So it's been fun. It's been challenging, and I'm excited that it's out there. I've written the sequel, and the sequel is going to be out in April of 2026. I've also written a short story as a prequel, which is The Wind Witch of Draakensky. So that's out there for free on Amazon. It's a 30-minute read, and it introduces the main character. And what else? I've got 3 other novels out: Greylock, which is about a music phantom, The Dazzling Darkness, which is a ghost story, and Night Sea Journey, which is angels and demons, and a lot of short stories on Amazon that are free.
Okay, that sounds great. Lots of stuff for our listeners to go check out. So, we're here, as I said, to talk about dark Gothic fantasy. So, what do you think are the core elements of the darker supernatural Gothic fantasy?
Well, generally, you've got your horror, you've got your supernatural elements going on, and you have your fantasy. For Dragon Sky, the opening of the story is the ghost is speaking. So we've got the ghost established at chapter 1. And then you meet John Moreland, who is the lady of the land. She owns Draakensky Windmill Estate, and she is haunted. She lives in this windmill, and she is haunted by the ghost. And then the main person arrives, Charlotte. And when Charlotte and Ja begin to interact and the relationship grows, we discover that John Moreland is a wind sorcerer. Okay, so now we have witchcraft. Okay, so ghost story, witchcraft. As the story evolves, we get into magic, river magic, owl magic, wolf magic. Wolf magic comes in with Charlotte's romantic interest, Mark Sexton. So the element for Gothic fantasy is definitely horror, supernatural, and then you have the magical elements, the fantasy side of it. And those 3 elements are necessary if you're going to call your book uh, Gothic horror fantasy.
Yeah. So, supernatural and fantasy sometimes meld a little bit. So, how would you define both of those?
Well, supernatural is definitely, your more powerful entity. I mean, traditionally it's vampires and ghosts and werewolves and things like that. In my story, I don't have that, but balancing it with the fantasy. So you got your supernatural, your ghosts, and your witchcrafts going on, and then you have magical elements going on. And when those two, there's kind of like I guess, a balance of it as the story grows. I mean, it's not something I manipulated into the plot or the storyline. It kind of happened on the page as it goes. I didn't intend on writing fantasy into the story because I write mostly supernatural. Um, but it just happened that way. And it just kept evolving and evolving. And I had to just keep shifting things around. In the end, you kind of have to have that balance that shifts back and forth between supernatural horror events and the fantasy events. It's tricky.
Yeah, it is. So, what appeals to you about writing dark Gothic fantasy? Do you enjoy writing more historical settings or in more modern day settings? And what sort of supernatural elements have you written about?
I do like modern day, but then it does reflect back on some kind of past history kind of thing going on. Um, Magical realism a little bit plays in there because you're living in your modern society and these magical elements are going on. Yeah, supernatural has always been a fascination to me. I think because we don't know why a ghost is here. what does the ghost want? How is this ghost here? How can the spirit remain here? So that kind of mystery is always fascinating to me. And I like to explore different kinds of ghosts. In The Dazzling Darkness, it takes place in a cemetery, so there's a number of different kind of ghosts going on. In Greylock, it's a music phantom, which is very ghostly, but a little bit stronger than ghosts. So it's the quality of the unknown and the unknowable that we explore. And I think just human nature wants to know what's on the other side and how where does that power come from? And that's what the fiction is. You create the power of how that can happen in real life. Well, in fictional life, not real life. It's real life to me.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's real life to all authors, but that is an interesting take on it, that you create the power of what might be or what may be. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So atmosphere, of course, is a big part of dark fantasy, especially Gothic fantasy. You've got historic settings, you've got creepy mansions. So what type of settings and atmosphere have you played with in your stories?
well for Draakensky, Windmill Estates in Bedford, New York. So it's modern day. It's on the Mianus River because there's river magic. So setting and landscapes are really, really important. There's owl magic, so we have woods and owls flying around kind of thing. The setting is always a presence for me. I usually get setting first most of the time. And then the character comes to the setting, suddenly appears there. So the windmill is haunted, which is exciting. In my other books, of course, the graveyard in The Dazzling Darkness is haunted. In Nightsea Journey, it takes place by the sea, and there's a firehawk that flies along the shore and over the ocean. So the sea was representing a lot of the unconscious and the subconscious mind in the story. So landscape and setting has to reflect what the character is going through. And there's always that give and take throughout the story as it keeps going.
Yeah, the sea is very atmospheric, and it's very conductive for ghost stories as well. I live in Nova Scotia, and there's a lot of ghost
Oh,
stories in and around the sea here.
yeah, I love that stuff.
Mm. So, dark fantasy can also be very versatile, as you mentioned a little bit. It melds with other subgenres like folk horror, epic fantasy. I've done some dark epic fantasy myself, and now it even has its own subgenre in romance. So, but do you think it's becoming less of a separate genre, or is it being kind of pushed aside?
I think it's blending in. We really are blending a lot of the old stuff, the folklore, with modern day situations. Um, I like the blending of it because it makes the story so complex. It's not just the straight horror or the straight storyline that goes forward that you kind of almost could predict, you kind of know what to expect. When you have these other elements coming in, it adds a big element of mystery and well, what does this have to do with this? You have to tie in all these loose ends. That to me is really exciting when I'm reading a story, when you start pulling in all these different ideas and different powers that come in and they get together in the center. And at the end of the story, they make sense. So I think it's a blending and this, Gothic horror fantasy element, the three of those things really do complement each other very well.
Yeah, they do definitely. So, do you think it makes it harder though to market the book to readers, or are readers becoming more used to it?
I think it does make it harder because, well, traditionally you want horror, traditionally you want fantasy. I mean, we've always had those pure genres existing and people choose which ones they want. Now, not only me, but other writers are creating these, combinations and these blends that I think readers are enjoying. It's become very popular now, these Gothic fantasy things and horror fantasy things. It's an expansion. It's no longer the pure way anymore. So now we're enjoying other elements. I mean, it's great to have fantasy and horror. I
Mhm.
mean, that's just So exciting because now you have two elements of power going on. And are they going to fight each other, or are they going to complement each other? Is one going to disappear? So it makes the tension a little higher.
Yeah, horror fantasy is the main thing I write, so I definitely enjoy it. So yeah. So um, with fantasy, especially gothic horror too, there's also a vein of romance running through these books. So why do you think those two genres mix so well? The dark fantasy elements and the romance.
Well, I'm always rooting for the couple, you know? I'm always excited when there's, a relationship going on and they're working together or they're working opposing each other with what the challenges are and what the threats are and what the dangers are. So I think when you have a romance, that adds to the situation because now the romance becomes complex. If you can't trust one of the members, if you can't trust the man or you can't trust the woman or there's something else going on. So it's a little bit deeper than a friendship or a companionship or a comrade working with you on something. There's more at stake because there's that emotional impact. There's the desire between them. There's the entertainment that goes on between them. And will they end up together? Will one kill the other? It becomes really the stakes are higher when you have a romance, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think my readers pretty much know that they're gonna kill each other at the end of my stories. But yeah, I like that though because I never thought of it like that. It lends another layer of psychological uh, interest to
Mhm.
it. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, higher tension for sure.
So early Gothic horror, dark fantasy often played into the damsel in distress um, trope. So how do you think this has evolved? And do you think there are more female protagonists now in dark fantasy?
That's a hard one. I love damsel in distress stories myself. I think that they're just classic and they're fun. Um, the modern woman, of course, doesn't want to be saved, wants to save herself. And yes, I think more protagonists are doing that on their own these days. Um, Female independence is really thriving. So I think there is a shift going on towards more aggressive and assertive female power in fiction. It's a good thing. Um, I like those stories as much as I like the romantic side of it where he saves her. That's fun too. So I think we're going to keep that range for a while.
Yeah, I mean the damsels in distress is not necessarily a bad trope. I think depends on how it's used, really, um, as well. Because I mean, a lot of horror you're gonna have victims or you're gonna have people in trouble no matter what, whether they're women or guys. They're going to be in trouble, and sometimes they need help getting out of the situation. So it kind of depends on how it's done, I think. So who do you think are some of the major influences of gothic horror? Mary Shelley's one that comes to my mind, as well as
Mhm.
Bram Stoker. So who else would you add to the list?
Oh, well, Mary Shelley, yes, definitely. I like Susan Hill's A Woman in Black for Ghost Story and Gothic. It's just really, really good. Mary Shelley, she wrote this wonderful novella, Mathilda. Did you ever read that?
Mm, no.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's about this woman who she lives, in the rural areas and she lives with her father, and all she knows is nature, art, and books. And there's this dark presence going on. It's beautifully written. So I have to say, Mary Shelley probably, I mean, I think Mathilda is probably better than Frankenstein. It's just so on. You can read it free online. Um, she really had the greatest influence, especially for female writers. She broke all the barriers. Someone like Angela Carter is another one who had wonderful influence. I mean, the purple prose, they say never write about purple, never write purple prose. Well, she did it, and her language definitely has that Baroque element to it, but she did it with such wit and she's so good at it. She made purple prose absolutely acceptable. So Angela Carter too, I think she has been a model of saying, yeah, we can write purple prose. Don't tell me I can't. I can do it, and I can make it work. So yeah, Angela Carter for sure.
Hmm. Well, there's people we need to check out, I guess. So, so when you're writing about supernatural beliefs or folklore traditions or mythological creatures, so how much of the original traditions do you incorporate, and how much do you tweak for your own purposes? And how do you stay respectful to the culture or the folklore?
A lot of examination and analysis of what I'm using. I use all the standards, whatever folklore I'm using. There's a lot of folklore in Draakensky, and it's Celtic, and I studied that for a long time and keep to that as much as I can. Folklore, of course, it can be a little blurry because it changes a little bit. It's not exactly each family has kind of their own little interpretation of it. So you do have some wiggle room. So if I'm using something that is, well known folklore in the Celtic tradition, then I would have to make sure that Mark Sexton, who um, has this in his history, that he uses it with the most respect. And if he's going to make some adjustments, he has to make sure that they're justified and that they're accurate for what he's doing, for his personality and his situation. So it takes a lot of going over and rewriting that, okay, this is working, or this isn't quite right. I've got to get this better. So I think you have to know it, and then you have to make sure you know your character's using it in the best way possible for the story and for the character.
Yeah, yeah, and I know the feeling about having to sift through different versions of things. I've done some Arthurian books, and there's so many different versions of those stories over the
Yeah,
years.
yeah.
Anyway, so do you think there are aspects or tropes that writers overuse when they're writing dark fantasy?
Well, we're seeing entirely too many Halloween clown faces for the villains. I'll tell you that. There's all over the place. Um, the evil twin. Everyone's read stories about that. The dilapidated house that's for sale, and the people that buy it don't know anything about it and come in completely, ignorant of the facts. Yeah, they still work. When I read Susan Hill's A Woman in Black, she did a rocking chair, an empty rocking chair. The ghost is in the rocking chair going back and forth, which, oh my God, we've seen that, what, thousands of times. She did it very well. If you take one of those cliches that we've seen so many times and you can put your own situation, the character has to put his or her own feeling into what's going on and purpose, the motivation going on there, it can work. So I would say, be careful of cliches, of course, especially the rocking chair, but it can be done. And that knocking on the door, when you're in the room and you hear this horrible screaming knocking on the door. It works in films really well. It's really creepy, but I have a hard time with that in a book. Knocking on a door doesn't really scare me, but in a film it does.
Yeah, there's definitely differences between film and book and what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
So, what's some of the most unusual research you've ever done for a book?
Oh, probably Greylock with the Music Phantom. Alexei George is the main character, and he's a concert pianist, he's a composer. So he's composing a symphony from the songs of Wales. So the story opens in Boston, where he's going to be taking this commission, and he has to go to Russia to tape whale songs so that he can write the symphony. And there's this music phantom that starts to haunt him from the time he's in Boston until the time he goes to Russia. And then when he goes to Mount Greylock to actually write the symphony. So researching music, how to write music, and it's classical music, how, what a composer does and how they find their music and their songs. And then you've got this music phantom who's also, a professional in music. So I had to know what the phantom was doing. So that took an enormous amount of research. Also listening to whale songs, so I could get a sense of what the character Alexei was feeling when he was listening to the songs and writing the symphony. So I used to pretend that I was actually on the piano playing the whale songs. So the research really got fair. I mean, I would spend just a long time listening to music and playing out the piano. I don't play an instrument. I'm terrible at music. I don't know anything about that. So that took years of research and practice and understanding music.
Yeah, music is definitely a hard thing to comprehend if you don't have any background in it.
Yeah,
So, do you have a favorite supernatural creature?
I don't think I do. Um, I just like ghosts in general. If it's a ghost story, then I'm going to be attracted to it. But I'm not attracted much to creatures or, vampires or monsters, zombies. That's not my thing. But ghosts certainly, and magical creatures. Probably my favorite magical creature is Skywolf, which is a novelette about a magical wolf. So if I have a creature, it would be this magical wolf, Skywolf.
Okay, so you touched a little bit on this before, but why do you think the supernatural resonates with readers? What is it about ghosts and magic and otherworldly things that appeal to human nature?
It's the other side, it's not what we are. So, and it's ghosts have power. Do they have more power than, our physical power, than our human power? Well, it appears yes, they can. And how is it that they have that power? um, Anything that is spiritual, supernatural and spiritual kind of go together for me. um, I love it. I think people just want to know what is the unknowable, and we can't know that. So in fiction, we can entertain ideas that maybe there are some answers. So it's looking for the answer that is unknowable, basically, that we're so attracted to, I think.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I like that. So, what are some of your favorite gothic horror or dark fantasy fiction books?
Hmm. I love anything Mary Shelley writes. She writes the best stuff. I like Edith Wharton. She writes really good ghost stories. The old timers, the old masters. I mean, Poe, of course. I still reread Poe a lot. Lovecraft. I'm not into the cosmic Lovecraft, but I do like his gothic stories. Um, Modern day Joyce Carol Oates. I like a lot of her stuff. Some of her stuff is a little too violent for me, but I like Joyce Carol Oates.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Poe myself. He really got the dark, creepy atmosphere down quite well.
Yes.
So, what's your next project? Do you have any upcoming book secrets you'd like to reveal?
Well, the sequel is going to be coming out in April to Draakensky. It's Draakensky 2, and it's Secret Mysteries of Wolf Magic. So it's the continuation of the story of Charlotte and Mark and what happens to them with more magical things that happen on Drakensky, because Drakensky is a magical property. Uh, you know, uh, Owl magic, river magic. We get into other kinds of magic. We get into wolf magic in the sequel. So it's completely written and it's been through the editing stages. So I'm in the final um, proofreading stages now and the end refinements. So that's what's happening. And there's another short story that's probably going to come up that I started just the other day, getting a few lines. Um, I'm kind of exhausted after all of the prequel, Dragon Sky, and the sequel. So I kind of been taking a break. but I need to get back to writing and doing a lot of marketing. So that's been taking up a lot of my time.
Yeah, I know the feeling of it being exhausted after getting a
Yeah,
series done.
yeah. You have to
Sometimes
keep
you
it
just gotta.
going. Marketing is really a task,
Mm,
and you do have to keep it going. But I
yeah,
much rather be writing, of course.
yeah, and sometimes you just wanna go write something else entirely that's not the series for a while, and then
Yes. Yeah,
but
absolutely.
anyway, I think we'll wrap the interview up here. Thank you for being a guest. A pleasure chatting with you.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Nita. I've enjoyed it.
And that's it for this episode of Shadows and Ink. And join us next month for another episode. And bye for now.